Hello and welcome to the 21st Century Work-Life podcast, where we talk about leading remote teams, online collaboration, and working in distributed organizations. My name is Pilar and I'm the director of Virtual Not Distant, a company where we help managers of remote teams to get the most out of online collaboration. You can find out everything we do over at virtualnotdistant.com. Hello and welcome to episode 343 of the 21st Century Work-Life podcast. Before I forget, this is a What's Going On episode and we are recording on the 7th of December 2023 because I always forget to timestamp these episodes, Maya.
And time is an illusion anyway. It just flies past whatever we do about it. So
yes. Listeners, welcome. My name is Pilar if we haven't met before. And Maya Middlemiss is here with me for the last What's Going On episode of 2023.
Oh, the last one. Hello, everybody. Gosh, that's I'm not ready for the end of the year yet. Not in any sense.
Yes, it's come quickly, especially 7th of December. This will, of course, go out in a couple of weeks. But still, so we are here as every other year with the one of many probably end of year wrap-ups. We're not even going to try predictions this year, are we, Maya?
Well, predictions always seem to have this habit of coming back on you.
So we've got a few things to look at today. What's been on my mind all throughout, well, especially the last half of this year, is are we moving backwards or forwards or backwards with especially the whole conversation around remote work, which has really settled this year in, I think, in different ways. One in starting to look at what does it really mean, and the other is it's gone another way, which is let's just ignore everything we've learned in the last 2 or 3 years. But so let's start with the first one. Let's start with the nuances. Our guest this month in December was Valentina Thörner with her wonderful tiara, the Empress of Remote, with this great conversation about really looking into what remote means, especially in the axis of location and schedule. What did you think, Maya?
Well, I love any conversation involving Valentina, for a start, no question. She's so smart, she's so grounded. And yeah, I really enjoyed all of it. Her frameworks that she works with her clients are always enlightening. But it was great to see her generalizing that out to remote work. And I really like the real life touches and the explanation. I've heard the tiara story before, but it always bears reflecting on how important it is to bring your personal branding and icebreakers along with you wherever you go. And she's nothing but consistent. So respect to your majesty. Is it majesty within it, or your grace? I don't know.
Is the I don't know, her empress. I don't know. I forgot to ask her how I should
how should we address her?
Yes. No, she was really fun, and something just as a behind the scenes thing, I managed to do the show notes just by grabbing bits of transcript. Because her speech was so, I don't know, she kept going, unless, for example, myself, where I go all over the place, but she really stayed on point. And I thought, well, instead of getting ChatGPT to do a summary, or instead of going through the things myself, I grabbed the transcript and I massaged it a little bit and just stuck it on the show notes. So it's longer show notes, but I think they're quite fun. So the point that really stuck with me, that I actually referred to even in a conversation a couple of days ago, was this concept of the individual contributors being able to make very small changes to how they're working, which could actually provoke a change in mindset. So the example she was giving, for example, was if you're running a meeting, to say, well, let's just start at 5 minutes past the hour so that people, if they have back-to-back meetings, can have that breathing space. And even just with that, it's the fact that we then start to think about time in a different way, because we're so structured and so meetings have to start on the hour, at 2:30. If we're a little bit innovative, at 2:15 or 2:45. And I remember Elise Keith during the pandemic, I think I don't know if it was some broadcast with her, and she said that they had found there was such a surge in use in Zoom at those times, at the hour and the half hour, that even just by moving your starting time a few minutes, you could actually have a better experience. I think that's what it is, but something like that.
Yeah, I'm sure I've heard that about Teams analytics, that in big enterprises, everybody hits their servers on the hour, and actually sometimes the performance isn't everything that it could be. And actually, this surely is just a legacy from our face-to-face days of booking rooms and physical resources. There's absolutely no reason in the virtual world why we have to have a meeting starting on the hour anyway.
So all of that, I thought that was really great. Anything else specific from that?
I just really like the pragmatic kind of, well, just try it. Send everybody home for a week, see what breaks, and then fix it. It's not like a big deal. I just like that kind of experimental mindset that she brings to her consulting and to the conversation. And I also really like the idea of aligning the remote work and work from anywhere policy with the organizational values. And that's part of, we've figured this out for you. This is how you can do it. It's actually, I look at a lot of job ads with Remote Work Europe, and a lot of them, like, they might be tagged as remote in LinkedIn, but there's nothing in anything in the advert or what the organization puts out there to suggest that they've thought it through and that they can actually make it work. It's so refreshing when you do come across somewhere that's actually says, right, you can work from these countries, or from these countries you can have an employment contract. Rest of world, you'll be a contractor, or just something to show that people have given it some thought, or they're very specific that remote only means within the US or whatever, and then you can just move on if that's not relevant to you. So I think it's moving it up the tree to the whole organizational level, that to actually think through these things before somebody comes along and says, can I work from, or can I work at this time of night, or whatever. If the organization's done the work, then it's just so easy, and people can use that as a filter from the outside.
What strikes me is that we are coming to the point where you can, as you say, if you want to start experimenting, you can say, right, we did the remote work some time ago. It felt like people liked it. However, let's start again. It's almost, let's start experimenting again, because there's such a legacy of what remote work was during a specific period in time. It's almost like, right, let's pretend we never did it before.
Yes, imagine a clean slate. And you can do that digitally, because it's not like you've got a 10-year lease on your app or something. So, you can just tear it up and start again.
Yeah. And the other one is the other side, which is we can now be bold. I mean, there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of people that want to be able to work from anywhere or from home or whatever. But there's also a lot of people who want an office. And there are some people who want this and that. So actually, what we've shown is that there's lots of ways of doing this. So I think that now organizations can be bold and say, well, this is what it means for us, and this is where our limits are. And, they might be in the paper for a day, but that's okay.
And this is still evolving. So you can set precedents. You can probably set case law and tribunals if you have to, but it does take a bit of courageousness, perhaps, but maybe you'll have a breakthrough that makes you the most desirable place to work that anybody could have imagined.
Yeah, and that could be that we don't do remote.
Yeah.
There's so many people who don't want to be working from anywhere and who want to go to an office where there are people. And that's an option as well. It's those I think that the most difficult places are the opposite, those poles where everyone distributed or everyone in the office, but they still exist as this, I don't know, there's lots of people. There'll be people who want both.
You mean it's the end of 2023 and we haven't figured all this out yet?
No.
Another year.
Another year of figuring it out. Going back to your point about law cases, so one of the things I picked up recently was a law case about these making back to the office decisions. And it's all very well for me to be saying, oh, let's ignore everything that's happened, start with start from zero. But actually, that's not possible. And just being serious for a moment, I'm just going to read from an article by People Management, which is a case update of employers' homework. The need for employers to do their homework when they're making back to office decisions. So The Nationwide Building Society in the UK faced legal action after they dismissed an employee who couldn't comply with a new mandate for full office presence due to her caregiving responsibilities. The tribunal awarded the employee £350,000, ruling that the company's office policy resulted in unfair dismissal and indirect disability discrimination by association. And this is such an interesting, I mean, it's a terrible thing to have to go through in all sorts of ways, but it touches on so many different things.
Yeah, it's fascinating what this means as a legal precedent, because so many people enjoy remote working because of some factor that would disadvantage them in the traditional face-to-face workplace, whether that's they're in a group that might be discriminated against, they have caring commitments, they have a disability, they have health conditions. There are so many reasons that people might want to work remotely. And I think that this is such an interesting case because it's basically found that the employer has to have a better reason than that to call them back. They have to actually prove something in terms of the productivity or the data in order to override the fact that somebody wants to work from home because of something unrelated to the workplace that puts them at a disadvantage. So yeah, really fascinating outcome.
And I wonder whether the next few years will give us more of these cases because, of course, probably this person, I mean, now I'm making up stuff, but this person was probably brought into the job before the pandemic. And maybe there wasn't this opportunity to work from home as easily, or it wasn't, it was more of a big deal. But this transition has affected everyone and has left everyone in all sorts of ways. I mean, the same way in which it's left people who applied and went into a job thinking, oh, I'm going to have a nice office space with my colleagues and stuff, and that's been taken away. The same now, there's people say, well, actually, you can offer me this, and yes, maybe this is not what we decided at the beginning, but it's possible now, and things have changed. So now I can ask for something different.
Yeah, and that's something different might have been intangible before if they said, oh, well, nobody works from home. This is an office job. This is what you come to. We don't think it'll work. And it'd be very hard to prove that it could work in the past. But now we've had this global natural experiment going on that people can actually say, well, look, this is the time that we work from home and this is how productive I was. These are the results that we achieved. It's very hard to argue then that there's any business case for saying you can't do that any longer.
So suppose in this way we're moving forwards, as in these things are starting to get really nuanced, meaty, and the law is being involved. And I was surprised about this outcome, actually. But to counteract that, less to do with remote work, more to do with new ways of working. The UK government has come up with some guidance regarding the 4-day working week arrangement in local authorities. The status of the guidance as of 7th of December is the government has issued this non-statutory guidance to state the government does not support a 4-day working week in local authorities as it does not believe that it delivers local taxpayers value for money. The government does not expect councils to adopt this arrangement. Should councils disregard this advice and there is evidence of service decline or failure, DLUHC, which is the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities, or another government department may raise concerns directly with the authority, monitor performance more closely, and consider options to correct declining performance. So this is the government saying,
don't do it.
Do not do it because we think it does not believe that it delivers local taxpayers value for money.
Yeah.
It's not that it has been proved.
No, nobody has measured anything. And let's just warn you that we will use this as a stick to beat you if performance fails due to cuts or austerity or anything else. Everybody back sitting in rows and cubicles, 9 to 5, where the taxpayers can see them and everybody can feel that they're getting value for money, even if the productivity goes down.
Yeah, this really, I was gutted by this because I was hoping that the whole showing that remote work could work in some cases and that we could play a bit more with location and schedule would then open up for the 4-day week a bit more. And also that well, we had, I don't know if it was the beginning of this year or the last year, where we had the big thing with lots of companies in the UK signing up to the 4-day week and showing it worked and everything. And then the government has just decided, no, yeah, it's all okay for those hippies in the private sector. We proper people, we've got to be in the office 5 days a week, even if it would be better. I'm sure it would be better for the taxpayer if we had a 4-day week and people were a little bit happier, working condensed hours. A little bit more
motivated, a little bit more inspired, a little bit more keen to get their work done on time so they could take Friday off instead of, oh dear. It is really depressing. But I suppose we'd have to try and see it as more differentiation of where people will choose to work. Some people do want that structure around them maybe, and they don't want to be under pressure to get things done in a shorter time or to be eminently productive if their productivity is going to be measured by keeping a seat warm anyway. I don't know what the answer is here, but it is depressing.
So we shall see what else is forbidden to to try and change the ways of work. It's also very depressing. This whole adoption of remote work and more technology and just different ways of working has done that I think has a negative impact is this danger of being always on, which I don't think still has been addressed, because we're so happy to have the flexibility that we and to have the technology and to be working from home at any time. I'm being really cynical now. I saw something on LinkedIn. It was from my different industry, from the voiceover industry. Someone just saying how somebody had approached them and said, "Oh, can you do this job and can you do it for today?" I'm sorry, no. The request was to voice a script right now. Those were the words. And I've seen that with, I remember the days when we had to go to the studio to record anything. So we had to go for an audition into the studio. We used to get paid to go into the studio for a voice test, which I thought, coming from the theater, I was like, what? And then, of course, you booked your time, you went in, you did your thing, that. And now, of course, I sometimes get just emails saying, can you voice this on your iPhone? Can you just do a test? I mean, I don't get for tonight, but I do get maybe a couple of days, and that's good. But all of that has changed. But to then feel like now,
how can right now ever be an expectation? Yeah. And yet it does remind me of a conversation I had, and I'm trying to remember who it was with a few weeks ago, with somebody trying to introduce somebody to the idea of asynchronous working. I was saying, but I don't want to have to work in the middle of the night. When I was like, no. It doesn't mean you work. You can work at any time in the 24 hours. It's about when you choose. And I think they were just terrified of the idea of a workday not having any hard edges to it, where they couldn't possibly be contacted or called upon. And it is a dangerous misinterpretation of that state of affairs, that somebody could expect you. You know, there are certain jobs which will always have to be right now. If it's somebody's calling a customer support line or something like that, that's different. But, you know, for most jobs, it should never, ever mean that. And it's going back to that, being expected to respond to chat messages in real time and things like that, that it shouldn't be the norm, and there should be a justification for it. And yeah, the idea of delivering a freelance voiceover right now is quite scary, really.
Yeah. So there is that danger. So everything. So if I sound a little bit negative today, I think it's really interesting, like looking at the downloads of the episodes during the year. The most popular episodes are all the ones that deal with the more difficult or less pleasant side of work. So at number one, I mean, I haven't rated them. I just wrote down the ones that had the most downloads. Was the one on terminations with Julieta, which was episode 333. The one on conflict, which was 331. And then there was one that was called Are We Stressed Out? Blah, blah, creativity and productivity, the upside and downside. That was episode 330. Although we also had the effective manager mindset for global virtual teams, which was 315, was also very popular as well.
Oh, thank goodness. Somebody wants effectiveness.
Yes. And the one on visibility and transparency in leadership with Mark Kilby 321 was also popular. But I found it very interesting that termination, conflict, that we stressed out. Yeah.
Oh dear. Yeah. That's quite a shocking finding. But I suppose it goes to show the role of podcasting actually as information that people are searching for. And sometimes it is that just in time. I need to find out about this right now. I assume it's not people browsing their feed idly and thinking, wow, that looks interesting. That will uplift me in this moment. I'm sure it's people who need to figure something out or need to deepen their understanding about something specific that they're dealing with. So it's great that these episodes are getting picked up in that way.
I would love to know, listeners, how you choose which episodes to listen to or not. So Pilar at virtualnotdistant.com. And for example, the episode on terminations, which was so popular. Also, it's not a topic that's covered often.
No.
Because I imagine someone like Julieta has a very specific job. I mean, who does terminations in the virtual space as well? It's who specializes in that. So maybe there's also a little bit of, what is that? So I'd love to hear. Yes. So shall we look at what might be moving forwards, Maya?
Moving forward sounds good. Yes, let's leave the terminations and stress and conflict.
Let's leave all that to one side. I went back to the Buffer's State of Remote Work 2023. When I say went back, I think I probably ended up there in some rabbit hole. And I found this number interesting. It said that one of the outcomes from the State of Remote Work thing was remote workers are split on the impact that working remotely has on their career growth. 36% of remote workers said career growth is easier as a result of working remotely, and that's 14% higher than last year's response. On the other side, 28% of remote workers said career growth is more difficult for them, but this is down from 45%. So last year it was 45, this year it's 28. And then 36% said that remote work had no impact on their career growth. I mean, as always, I haven't dug into who they interviewed, who they surveyed. But I thought it would have been the opposite, that this year there was more of a feeling that remote work could stunt your career growth. But maybe I'm in a different bubble.
Maybe organizations are getting better at managing remote over the longer term. That's the optimistic interpretation of this, is that people are feeling, as the people who are working remotely now on a more or less permanent basis, then they're in organizations that see this as part of their long-term strategy. So maybe they are starting to put in place better reviews and opportunities and so on that simply wasn't there a year or so ago. It was kind of, well, you're out of sight, so good luck with your career. Whereas now they're realizing that for a lot of talented people, this is a long-term preference, lifestyle choice. And it's in the organization's interest to try and retain those people and develop them and help them grow their careers. So there's clearly still a long way to go, given that split. And 36% isn't any kind of majority. It does suggest, though, that things are improving, and maybe people are starting to think more creatively about career growth, that actually remote working can unlock more even within an organization, because it's not about, well, I'd have to transfer to this office in another country, or we could actually move in different dimensions in cross-functional teams when we disregard the geography, and actually it should open up more opportunities. So there's still some work to do there, but I thought this was an encouraging statistic.
I'm also wondering, so I'm just looking at the breakdown of the demographics, and millennial, 58% of respondents were millennials. So I wonder as well whether there's also a different outlook, because I also wonder whether this sense of whether being remote increases your prospects of growth or not. One, I'm sure it's a sense, unless you've really tried to change and had that experience. And I wonder as well if it's as much a mindset of the people surveyed as much as where they're looking for work. Also looking at how long they've been in the professional workforce. like half of them have been between 3 and 14 years as professionals. So maybe they're also quite senior.
Yeah, I mean, let's remember millennials are now into their 40s. So
really?
Yeah.
I thought they'd be in their 20s.
No, afraid not.
Yeah.
20s are mostly Gen Z now, up to about 26, 27, I think. So most millennials are, they're catching up with us Gen Xers, but quite late career. In many cases, senior career or people who are shifting and evaluating, maybe even shifting through life stages where they want something different from their life and career. So it's interesting to see how that's playing out.
It'd be nice to see, I'm sure there are some numbers. I wonder whether Nick Bloom and his colleagues who do all these monthly reports, whether they've got data on the different ages, how people are being able to move or not, how they're finding whether they can grow in their career or in their organization if they're employees, depending on, the kind of job you're doing, whether maybe people in management traditionally have a little bit more flexibility, but maybe not. I don't know. It'd be really interesting.
We'll see these generational trends continue to play out. And I think it's got a lot to do with the life stage as well as the age, and whether people have family age with children and whether they want to be home for them or whether they're later on in life they might have more interest in travel and moving somewhere new. And all these ripples will continue to intersect with people's comfort with technology and everything else that might feed into how and where they want to live and work.
I think also seasoned remote workers might find it easier to move around, to go from organization to organization because they're more used to networking online.
Yes. Yeah. So they maybe take more responsibility for their own career growth as well, because to say, is it easier to network remotely? Maybe the people who say no are expecting more to be done for them, as opposed to, I can network with anyone I like in the world, because that's my lifestyle and my work style and my approach to networking. Whereas if you think it's more difficult when you're working remotely, maybe that's because you haven't really realized what's out there or what you could do for yourself.
Yes, so we shall see how that continues. Finally, we couldn't do an episode in 2023 without talking about AI. That's we didn't talk much about hybrid this year.
No, that's not our word of the year this year.
No, I think ChatGPT is the word of the year. And I saw, Maya, that we did an episode in, when was it? It was on the 21st of November, 2019, we did an episode on whether artificial intelligence was the new team member.
That's so funny, because when I saw that in our list of stuff to discuss, I thought it was talking about November this year. Oh. I know we've done quite a few episodes about AI. I thought it was before that, but but yeah, this stuff, we're coming up, I think it's this week is the anniversary of ChatGPT's free public release, but this stuff didn't spring fully formed a year ago. Business was using intelligence and automation of one sort or another for a lot longer than that. So yes, of course, obviously we were ahead of our time because that's how we roll. But even other people were talking about it then, and we were referring to stuff that was going on in the apps that we're still using now. It's still very much my favorite team member in terms of who can I delegate things to first. Before I pay a human to do something, let's see if there's an automation to do it. And that's the one thing that hasn't changed. It's just the scope of what can be automated that's changed. And that's going to only continue, I'm sure. Not that we're going to make predictions.
Yeah. No.
Won't go there.
I just think it's so fascinating that, I don't know whether, I'm in two minds. I think that the use of Gen AI at work means we are moving forwards in some ways, but also the use of it, I feel like it's taking us backwards in many aspects, by which I mean, we've had this conversation here a few times about how it reminds me of all the shadow IT that was going on in organizations when everyone was locked into some kind of system, remote work, and all the employees or team members had decided to use something else that was maybe even forbidden by the organization. And Salesforce brought out a study on November 15th, 2023, more than half of generative AI adopters use unapproved tools at work.
Right.
And again, it's not... Sorry?
So they're outsourcing their work, not to somebody from Fiverr, but to ChatGPT. Oh, God. Yeah.
Well, we don't have the details whether they're passing work as theirs or what, but they're oh, no, you're right. 64% have passed off generative AI work as their own. And 41% of workers would consider overstating their generative AI skills to secure a work opportunity. So really interesting that we've got these opposing things. And like at one point, and on the one hand, we have, you can't use these tools.
Yeah, but do you know how to use these tools?
Yes. So I think we're there a little bit where it's just moving so fast that I don't think neither employers nor employees know how to keep up with this.
No, and we don't know what it's going to be in terms of its effect going forward as well. Obviously, working in content is something I'm very concerned to see how this does play out, but I can't begin to predict that. I did come across something which, and I haven't got a source for this, but it was something I read somewhere that Amazon's self-publishing platform has had to introduce a limit now per author of not more than 3 manuscripts per day.
Yeah.
Because of the volume of AI-generated content. Now, you and I have both written and published books, Pilar, and maybe it's taken something measured in months, if not years, but the idea that people are now having to be limited to not more than 3 books to be published a day is absolutely terrifying for anybody who does make a living putting their thoughts into words and putting them out into the world. So I think that just definitely proves that content as an industry has or is continuing to be changed beyond all recognition. And I don't know what we'll be reflecting on in a year, what we'll decide our word for the year 2024 is going to be. But it does seem to me that we're at a bit of an inflection point where it's got to go one way or the other, that content will become utterly meaningless or will somehow have an implosion that takes us back to some drive for a different kind of authenticity. I really don't know, but that thing about 3 books a day did mess with my head a little bit.
Well, yes, it has. I mean, it's that kind of, it's a little bit like the Kindle rush many years ago. I mean, it's not, the thing, you're right. The thing is that you can generate text so fast with ChatGPT. And of course, with Amazon, nobody really is stopping. Even there's been so much plagiarism as well. And they just don't look at that kind of content thing until somebody flags it.
Yes.
So I've had a look because revelation, I'm writing under a pen name now. And I will come out with, and the name of my pen name is Sam Byte. Okay. And Sam Byte is basically me behind the computer with ChatGPT generating a book.
Wow, okay. So what are you and Sam collaborating on?
Well, Sam has written, Sam who is me and ChatGPT, are writing a book on time management. So it's called The Remote Worker's Guide to Time Management. And it's a backwards and forwards of editing, looking at the thing, making sure, anyone who's played with ChatGPT knows that it's very flowery, that it has lots of redundant sentences that you can just take out. So it's been about, one, curating the content, making sure it reflects what I think about the topic, of which I know a bit, but not a lot. And like you say, to write that would probably take me a year. With ChatGPT, it's probably going to take me a month from idea to publication.
You can be an editor more.
It's more, that's right. Yeah, it's more like I'm seeing myself more of an editor and discovering through the process that I am actually a much better editor than I am a writer. Because the times when I've tried to write a paragraph by myself and then I've come to read the whole thing to see what bits I need to edit, those have been the bits that are a mess. The ChatGPT ones, they can say something better or worse, but you can just scrap them. But with this, I need to tweak this and this. So, but where I was going with this, as well as, the book is now, the Kindle version is up for pre-sale if anyone wants to have a look. And I'm sure I'm going to talk a lot about it here. But when I went to see what else there was and just to check out how ChatGPT is being used, I have come across books that even said introduction and then had the lines, had everything and then conclusion. So it's just the text had just been lifted completely.
I haven't even bothered to read it back, just upload it. Yeah.
And that is the issue as always, is the mindlessness and the lack of any kind of, I don't know, what would you call it, ethical, or I don't know what you call it,
just quality control. I think there's got to be a human involved somewhere in this process, surely.
Well, that's my other thing. Unless the thing, it's very interesting because I've been thinking a lot about this, obviously, putting myself in the chair of the person doing an 85% chat and content written, because I stand behind the ideas, is that it depends. If you are looking for a book where you go and want to connect with the author, yes. But if you want a how-to guide, of which there are many written by humans I've compared some that are written by humans by what ChatGPT has given me, and I know which one I prefer. If all you're looking for is a how-to, if working through a machine is giving you good content, why not? The problem is, like you say, if you're not saying who it is, if you're deceiving, then maybe it's a problem.
Yes, and I think it is part of that democratization of content and ideas that's important too, even if that means that ghostwriting is going to be one of the careers that disappears.
Yeah.
And I used to do more of it than I do now. And a lot of that was spent working with people who weren't good writers, people who just had amazing ideas. But it was part of my job to kind of tease that out of their brain and then structure it in a logical way. And they weren't my ideas. And it didn't have my name on it at the end anyway. But I got paid well to do that. And it does seem that that's definitely something that a large language model can do now very well. It's not supposed to be having the ideas, but if the ideas are there and you can feed them in, and it can actually arrange them and structure them. And I've used ChatGPT for developmental editing, fed it back an article that I've written that I felt is weak and said, question this, put holes in it, still man this and tell me where I can strengthen it, because it can do that. It understands the rules of argument and discourse in a way that you can lose sight of, especially if you're writing something you might care about or have a strong opinion about and find it difficult to see another point of view. So I think it's got huge potential there, and certainly not everybody's using it yet, which is why, going back to the job seekers and the hirers, people are saying, well, do you actually know what to do with this stuff? Can you make it work? And it is funny that 6 months ago, everybody was saying, we're all going to be prompt engineers now. And of course, we're not. Yeah. There's very few people actually have a job called prompt engineer, but we're all using this stuff in the same way that we don't describe our jobs as bus riders or computer operators. We just do what we do. These are the tools that are going to be part of all of our work going forward. And the people who do know how to use it well will have a huge advantage.
So, as if the whole hybrid work and the whole new ways of working wasn't enough for organizations. Now there is this to deal with. The Salesforce had a few more numbers. They said workers who have never received or completed training about using generative AI overall, 69%, about using generative AI ethically, 71%, and about using generative AI safely, 69%. So I think it's just caught everyone by surprise as well. And on top of still dealing with every kind of crisis and just still trying to figure out what does our workforce look like and how will it look like in the future. Now there's this on top. So
absolutely. And I'm going to say, advantage freelancers and small businesses, we can actually respond to this stuff a lot more nimbly and agilely than big organizations who are going, oh God, do we ban it? Do we train people? It's all going to take time and budget and planning we haven't got time for. Whereas a freelancer can just fire up ChatGPT and say, tell me how to do my job better, and refine that prompt and develop that into a conversation. And by the end of it, they probably will be doing their job better.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a whole question that needs to happen in organizations, in the larger ones, especially about, again, going back to how much can we trust people to do their job the best, and how can we support them while guiding them, while and what do we need to put in place for when things go wrong? Because that's another thing, that if we start to trust more, if people can experiment more, especially with things like these, mistakes will be made.
Yep.
So can we just prepare for the fact that mistakes will be made rather than making sure that no mistakes get done? It's really, I'm glad I don't have to do any of this.
Gosh, who's responsible for those mistakes? If somebody is passed off work as their own, then that goes out with the voice of the organization, stamp on it, and all the issues about copyright. Anyway, yes.
So, good luck, everyone, for 2024.
Welcome to the new year and the rest of your life.
I think, though, that I still think we're probably better than we were at the end of last year. Maya, definitely you are on the way to something. Do you want to update us on what's going on with Remote Work Europe?
Oh, thank you. Well, it's kind of following on from this sort of delicate segue. And basically, we're trying to develop the community side of things even more, because I feel so powerfully that we're going to need some places which are rooted in real connection and authenticity in this strange new world as we try and figure out these tools and what to do with our businesses. So Remote Work Europe has been growing out of a response to that need throughout the year. And we've now got, across our Facebook communities, we've got about 40,000 followers, which is really exciting. Mostly Spain, but also Sweden and UK are growing really fast. And we've got the new website up, which it's only a few weeks now. We're remoteworkeurope.eu, and the EU isn't political. We welcome everybody, and let's say the UK is one of our most thriving communities. And the most exciting thing that we're launching for the new year is a premium private community, Remote Work Europe Connected, because we want to go one step further for the people who want more, people who want more support, more access, more community, and want a private space as well. So we wanted to create somewhere where people can ask questions, can experiment, can share their wins and fails, can set goals and hold each other accountable, can learn from each other. And the doors are open now as this goes out. They're closing for the founder cohort on New Year's Eve. So make sure that you sign up to remoteworkeurope.eu/connected. You will be able to join us on a free trial initially. Come in and just see if it's a place where you feel you might thrive and feel at home.
There we go. Check it out. We'll put the link in the show notes. And that's another trend. That's something that has been happening during this year, is that with the whatever is going on Twitter and the massification of LinkedIn and people are turning now to private online communities now that everyone feels safe in them. Because maybe, 10 years ago it was like, I'm not signing up to that thing, and also paying for something like that seemed a bit weird. But now it's like, I want like you say, I want a safe space. I want a private space. I don't want to be saying my views to all these people. This is definitely a trend. We'll see loads. And this is my only prediction, is that more private spaces for writing and more private spaces for discussing online.
Yes, I think we will see more differentiation in how we connect and communicate online. And a lot of that will be behind security or paywalls or something, because we're craving that authenticity. I think 90% of everything you see on LinkedIn now looks like it's been written by ChatGPT.
Right. So, listeners, Remote Work Europe, just Google it.
I don't know if we're on Google yet. We're so new.
Look at the link on the show notes. Or you can also connect with Maya if you're not connected to her, Maya Middlemiss on LinkedIn.
You can Google me. You'll find me. Yeah.
And you can ask her any questions there directly. If you want to get in touch with me, my name is Pilar Orti. Pilar@virtualnotdistant.com is my email address. And listeners, well, I hope you will stay with us for a few more episodes, because that's another thing that happened over the last, not just this year, but the last couple, is that there are a lot of shows which have been covering very similar ground to where we focus on. So it is not taken for granted that you are still here with us. So I suppose it's time to wish everyone the best end possible to 2023 and an even better start to 2024.
Absolutely. It's been wonderful to be talking with you in this strange asymmetric way this year. And as Pilar said, we really do appreciate your time and attention. It's noisy out there and you've stuck with us. So all I can wish you is that you, whatever you're celebrating this time of year, that you take some rest, maybe take some time to reflect and have a really joyful, healthy, happy time.
Thank you for listening.
A big thank you to Ross Winter for polishing the audio of this episode. And thank you, listeners, for choosing to listen to the 21st Century Work Life podcast. Remember to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app, and you can check out the full show notes over at virtualnotdistant.com/podcasts. Talking of podcasts, we have another show you can listen to, Management Cafe, which you should also be able to find on all podcast apps. I have been Pilar Orti. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, enjoy.